Signed your name, now the bill won't stop.
Big promises, but the truth got dropped.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back.
If they sold you lies,
You can cut those ties.
borrow a defense, take your power back. The enrollment trap.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Enrollment Trap, the podcast where we break down how predatory schools engineer pressure, urgency, and silence, and how borrowers are reclaiming their stories through borrower defense. I'm Frank, and I'm here with my co-host, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Today's episode is a big one. We have a super surprise mega guest, and I know you guys are going to love it. This is going to be a really good episode.
So, just so you know, we had a planned episode, and when we heard this person was willing to speak, we said our planned episode would be put off till next week. And for those of you who don't know, our guest on stage, who goes by Ginger, is none other than the infamous Mokie, aka Alicia Davis, one of the named plaintiffs in the Sweet case. So I am honored to have her here. So if you want to introduce yourself, have at it.
Cue the applause.
Yes.
As Frank said, we are joined today by Alicia Davis, the et al. Alicia Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Of the Sweet versus DeVos / Cardona / McMahon / whatever the heck is going on nowadays. So welcome, Alicia. We are glad to have you here. So if you want to just go ahead and start talking about your journey,
Yeah.
we don't have to talk about the case, but let's talk about like life before the case for you.
All right. Yeah.
So take it away. What was your first experience with your school? And we'll just start from there.
Cool. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Michelle. I appreciate it. I am the et al. In the Sweet v. Cardona named plaintiff section. I'm one of, I think, 7. So there's Teresa Sweet, myself, and I think 5 more, and I think that makes 7. But yeah, so my journey here has been very long. But to start off, I actually am a Corinthian college victim. I wanted to go back to school and wanted to do crime scene investigation in the mid 2000s. And at the time, I was tending bar and making really good money. But, when you tend bar, you don't have any benefits or health care, time off or anything. And so I was really drawn into the world of crime scene investigation. But growing up in Florida, you always see those commercials online since you're like kid coming home from school in the 80s and 90s, seeing these commercials for these for-profit colleges. So naturally, I saw a Corinthian college, Everest Institute, Everest College commercial growing up, like radicalized over the years. And when I decided that I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to do crime scene investigation, I reached out to Everest because I figured since it was doing online programs that it would accommodate my school, my schedule for working nights, and I could do stuff on my own time and I didn't have to be at class at 8 in the morning. Well, naturally I fell victim to their deceptive ways. Everest, well, it's actually called Florida Metropolitan University, and it was the Bradenton online campus. And I still remember the lady's name that enrolled me. And, I'll never forget it. But oh my goodness, I thought I just scored the lotto. I was going to do crime scene investigation. I was going to get a job with a criminal justice bachelor's degree from Florida Metropolitan University. And then naturally that just kind of not happened. So I actually went, excuse me, and did 2 years at this school, and I should have just saw the red flags, that popped up in the process of the universe telling me, like, this is not your path, don't do this. But I chose to ignore them because I was really dedicated in getting back into school and, getting a career. And at first, the red flags were like I couldn't get a hold of anybody to help me get into classes. I couldn't get a hold of anybody to get me online. I couldn't get a hold of anybody, like, when it came to finances. I couldn't get a hold of anybody when it came to anything that I needed to do online. And when I asked for ID to go onto campus, because I was in Orlando, they're like, "Oh yeah, you can get an ID and use our computers and, go online, like go in campus in person." And then, that ID never came. But during that process of, me trying to make my way through, the school switched over to become Everest University, which everybody's familiar with Everest University. And within 1 year of that happening, I essentially was ghosted by the school. Basically, they withdrew me from the programs. My enrollment counselor lady that I only worked with for a few months had already bounced, and I think I had like 4 more enrollment counselors to help me for school. And everybody I picked tried to talk to, just didn't work out. So eventually they just dropped me from their program. And every time I tried to call and ask them what was going on, like, why am I not allowed to roll in online classes? Like, what's up? It was always the same, drama. So from there, I eventually, left the school because I couldn't get in. But I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and head over to the local community college in Orlando and get my, credits transferred because I have 2 years of school. I did all the ed classes, like math and English and everything. And when I stood in line at the local community college there, and I was like, "Hey, I wanna transfer my credits. I wanna, go ahead and get back on because 'cause I'm already 2 years in," and they were like, "Oh, we don't accept those credits." I'm like, "Excuse me?" They're like, "Yeah, we don't accept those credits." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't accept these credits? These it's from you all have the same classes, like, it's from a college," And she's like, "No, we're accredited differently, so we don't accept any of those credits." And I was like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense." And that's when I kinda realized that there's this thing called accreditations, and there's regionally, and then there's nationally, and that for-profit colleges are accredited differently, but they fail to tell you that part when you're enrolling. So I ended up actually having to start over at the local community college. Actually, I had to start over from scratch because Florida Metropolitan University stole all of my Pell Grant money. And then additionally, they stole student loans. And then additionally, they charged me money at the school that I had to pay a monthly fee to in order to stay enrolled. And I sent them a check every month on top of everything else they stole from me. And I was on the dean's list. I was so proud of myself. And then, when I went to Valencia and realized, yeah, that's it. Here we are, I had to start over. And then at Valencia, they didn't accept any of my credits from Florida Metropolitan, which I had stated before. And then I had to take some tests to see where I would be placed and what classes like math and English and everything. Needless to say, my math skills were not very mathing, so I had to start over from the very bottom with math, but that's okay. But I think the biggest thing there though was I had to pay everything out of a loan from that moment on. I didn't have any more Pell Grants. So my entire journey, from starting over at Valencia Community College and then going to University of Central Florida several times and graduated with my master's and a minor and several certifications within the criminal justice realm. I didn't become a crime scene investigator because, surprise, you actually need a forensic science degree to do crime scene investigation here around Central Florida and stuff like that. So from there, I was able to complete my journey and obtain my position. I got a great internship through my school and was able to excel in my career, move up, and now, I'm a decade over in my career and working the realms in, but no thanks to Everest University. And then additionally, from there, when I realized that my credits wouldn't transfer, I started investigating. Like, it just didn't sit right to me. And that was in 2008. I started at Valencia in 2008. And then, I was like, this doesn't seem right. Like, how can you tell me all of this stuff and all my loans, all my credits would transfer over and my degree would be accepted and everything like that? While I'm working in my field, I'm asking questions like, hey, do you all accept degrees from Florida Metropolitan or Everest University and, working in the police department realm and law enforcement and analysis, they always were like, yeah, we don't accept degrees from that place, or that place is not accredited, or that place, you wouldn't be able to get licensed. And I was like, oh, okay. But my first job out of college, when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, was with the Florida Department um, Attorney General's office, under, I'm not going to name her name because she's terrible. However, I was actually starting to investigate and learn about consumer complaints, and I worked for the Consumer Financial Division, where I would investigate complaints from Florida citizens who were ripped off by scammy companies. A lot of our stuff was investigating timeshare rentals and timeshare scams, but I started looking into for-profit colleges because I started realizing that Everest University and Corinthian colleges and their empire were a for-profit college and an entity that, chose Florida and California to be its placement because it was the Wild West. Things were crazy here. They could get away with so much. And what I found doing my research and reading the complaints, I was just like shocked about this. And knowing that our attorney general at that time also had sued them for being deceptive and they settled out of court just kind of made me realize that I was not crazy, right? Like what I was reading, what I experienced was real and it wasn't just me. So once I got into the field of analysis and intel analysis, coming from the consumer complaints side of things and learning about consumer protection laws and learning about statutes and consumer protections, both at the federal and the state level, and I started researching and researching and researching, and keeping an eye on the for-profit college side. So around 2015 is when I started really reading about Corinthian colleges starting to have a meltdown, right? We're starting to hear about Kamala Harris, who is then the Attorney General in California. She was taking down this gigantic empire. And I started reading and understanding everything more that I experienced from Corinthian College School is real. It was completely real. And I was nothing more than a number to them and a paycheck. And I had the student loans to prove it. I had $40,000 worth of student loans. They were commercial held FFEL loans, which at the time, myself, like hundreds of thousands of other people, didn't understand that there was a commercial held FFEL program, right? They were just student loans. So, I started watching it and I saw something along the lines of borrower defense, the very early remnants of borrower defense. And I stumbled across a student debt organization that I believed and trusted in at the time. And this was 11 years ago, so a lot has changed. And started following the information about borrower defense. And I literally was typing an email in 2015, I enact my borrower defense to repayment application and my rights under consumer protection laws, and started citing all these crazy laws from Florida. And I sent it to the Department of Education and didn't hear anything. And I started working and organizing and dabbling in the student loan borrower defense realm, learning and absorbing as much as I could, and then eventually Kamala Harris just hit them with the nail and they just deflated, and it was the most beautiful thing I've seen in a very, very, very long time. They just trickled down and then they went poofed, and that was the start of the for-profit college sector being held accountable for all of us. And the aftermath of Corinthian College, we can talk about later on, but basically I am following this information. It's 2016 and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I saw that this student loan organization had put out a borrower defense application, the really early remnants of it. So again, I filled it out and, started citing all these, laws and regulations for student loans, violating my state and federal consumer protection rights or whatever. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed putting what I learned to use because technically they did violate all of that. But, the commercial held loan owner, my loans were serviced by AES, but they were held by EDMC? Yeah, EDMC? No, EDME. One of those. It's not the same corporation that owns all the other for-profits. It's another one. But basically, the commercial loan, I was like, F you, I'm not paying you. I'm never going to pay you. You can stick it to the man. I think I made one payment to them, and I was like, I'm never paying these bastards ever again. And so I went ahead and like started citing, like, I'm not going to pay you. I enact my borrower defense to repayment law and like citing the regulations, and they're threatening to garnish my wages. And, at the time I was working for the sheriff's office, and I had to go tell them that, I was about to have my wages garnished. And it was really, really embarrassing to me. Because additionally, when I had to get hired, I had this as a default on my credit. Right. So I had to explain to the sheriff, write a really detailed sheriff report like, hey, I'm not a bad person. I went and was defrauded by a scammy school. Like, I have no inclination to like do bad things while working at the sheriff's office. Like, I just want to get my career. And thankfully, they gave me that chance. And then as time went on, I started getting more involved in this realm, and I was referred to the project on predatory student lending. So let's go ahead, and we're going into 2019, but leading up to that, we know what happened in 2016. We had the first Trump administration come in with Betsy DeVos, who has very deep ties to the student loan industry, as well as for-profit colleges. And, there's a lot of corruption and stuff going on. So everything that was going on with the Corinthian college stuff when Obama was left office and Trump came in, really stuck us, right? We got stuck. They didn't discharge all of the Corinthian college stuff like they should have in 2016. Instead, they started dabbling in like partial discharges, like using these math equations to get people's discharge amounts, right? And basically what was happening was the Department of Education under DeVos was like, yeah, you're scammed, but basically you still benefited from going to that school. Yes, we think you're scammed, but you still have to pay for that benefit. And that goes along the line of like people saying like, oh, you can't, take back your education, just like when you foreclose on a home, you get something tangible back, but you can't do that with education. And I was like, oh, okay, this is really weird. But from there, I was referred to PPSL and was brought on as one of the named plaintiffs for the Sweet v. DeVos lawsuit filed in 2019. During that as well, there was another lawsuit that was playing in the background, like being planned, and that was called Pratt v. DeVos, which is another lawsuit that I opted to be a named plaintiff in as well. The Pratt lawsuit basically focused on DeVos's stupid mathematical equation to give you a percentage of discharge. So under the borrower defense program, she implemented a percentage. And if she and her team thought that you only received 10% discharge based on that you benefited ideology that we just talked about, that's what she did. And so I signed up to sue her because that's ridiculous, right? You're scammed or you're not. And you're not going to tell me that I'm not a victim and tell me I'm going to have to pay $40,000 when I have absolutely nothing to show for it. Like, I had no credits, I had no transcripts, I had no school to go to. I was able to get my documents after requesting them, and they had 5 documents in my name, and it told me why they ghosted me, which is basically because of money stuff. But essentially, I was like, yeah, this is ridiculous, lady. Like, I'm going to sue you again because I can, and I have the option to. So I did. During that time, I had applied for borrower defense, like I told you, in 2016, and I did get a decision on my borrower defense as Corinthian. I received a 10% discharge. I was approved. So on the numbers, on the stats or whatever for borrower defense, those numbers look good. DeVos is approving those applications. It looks like she's going through and approving thousands of applications. But what you didn't see was like she was approving people for 0%. Again, yes, you're approved, but you get nothing. You still owe all that money because you benefit. For me, it was 10%. So, I was pretty distraught. And I remember crying to one of the PPSL people on the phone because we didn't have any options or next steps related yet. And we had just filed a couple years earlier this sweet lawsuit in 2019. So when I got my partial approval, we had sued for sweet. Basically, sweet was under the disclosure of like you're not following the regulations and the law of processing borrower defense claims under the borrower defense regulations. You're holding on to them, and that's violating our due justice, right? Our due process under the Higher Education Act, and that's why we sued. There's this big misconception that sweet is about the dirty deeds of the schools and the dirty deeds of like the loan service industry and the dirty deeds of us being scammed, and it's not. It's based on the department failing or refusing to process our applications based on the rules and regulations. Has nothing to do with any of that in terms of like being proved that they were scammy. We all know they're scammy. The Exhibit C list kind of hints that they're scammy, but it doesn't necessarily say that they are indeed 1000% scammy as hell, and we all know they're scammy. Yeah, so here we are. Basically, when Cardona came in, thankfully, he realized like the ridiculousness that the DeVos team is in, and DeVos, like I said, was a crony for the for-profit college and student loan sectors in the industry, so naturally she's going to do in her best interest, and that's what she did. But when Cardona came in, he reversed the decisions for the percentage approval amounts, and it became all or nothing. You either got 100% or you were denied. There was no in between. There's no partial discharges, nothing like that. So that basically made it into my Corinthian College approval, and it was 100% approved. And I remember the moment in February of 2022. Well, I remember the moment I got the letter, right? Because dates are really important in my life, and they, sometimes the universe does things on dates that just make me smile. And so naturally, I got a letter of approval. Congratulations, Miss Davis. You have been approved for your borrower defense. And I got the letter from the department, and I was so excited, and I opened it up, and it was a special day for me. And then they had the wrong school listed on there. They had the beauty school, Marocello or Marabello Beauty School. And I laughed because there's like, what else can you do, right? That's all you can do is just laugh because, okay, that just another instance of how, I don't know, irresponsible the department is, or just how unorganized they are, or how sloppy they are. But yeah, so I knew it was coming. I got the email the next day, saying, oops, our bad. Here's your right school. Congratulations, you're going to be discharged. And it's going to be 100%. So I remember the day that I actually got the discharge. I was sitting down at Robbie's watching the tarpon and the beautiful, lovely weather down in Key Largo at Robbie's eating lunch. And I was with my in-laws, and I got the email. I didn't get an email. I saw that there was like a 0 because I'm excessively like checking my account, like all of you, like, oh my God, is it discharged yet? There's a negative number or any of this. And it went to 0. And it was like, I'm sitting in the parking lot, and it's really hot during that day. And I'm like calling this poor lady at the Department of Education, like, is this true? Is this real? Like, is this really going on? I'm like, I need to go to lunch, but I need to know this. And she was able to confirm that, and as well as my servicer with AES, that indeed my stuff was discharged and I had a 0. So naturally, I cried a lot, and then I had a bunch of margaritas, and I slept on the way home in the car. Thankfully, I was not driving. But I still remember that day. It happened in 2022, so it's been 4 years. And, I haven't left this realm yet because I care about this. It's very emotional and personal to me. It affected my life for, it's been 20 years pretty much. And I enjoy, I made a promise to myself that I would take down Corinthian College. I would watch them just I'm not going to say. I just wanted to see them fall to the ground, and I was going to do everything in my effort to help take down that industry. And so I continue to do that work because Corinthian has disappeared, but unfortunately, there's still 100,000 people with Corinthian college loans who still haven't been discharged. And so I stay and I run that social media group and keep them connected to the information through, connect them with PPSL or, other entities that can assist them or, kind of give them some instructions and information and ask questions. Because when it comes to group discharges, so outside of the suite case, there's a lot of misconception and a lot of misinformation. And we also have a lot of overlap between group discharges as well as the suite case. And it's confusing and it's tiring and it's exhausting. And as you know, Corinthian College did get a full group discharge in June of 2022. It's one of several. There was ICT Tech, there was Art Institute, there was folks who did apply for bar defense and had applications on file who went to University of Phoenix, and I believe that had a certain date criteria, as well as DeVry. I think that was another one that had like BDTR applications date criteria, as well as Ashford University and a couple other ones. But we're 4 years in for some of those people, and there's still 100,000 people still waiting for Corinthian College to be discharged. And like many of suite folks, those that fall into a group discharge, they don't have the same protections as the settlement for suite. They're basically fed to the wolves, and they are actually just have to wait until their stuff is discharged whenever the department gets around to it. So my Corinthian College folks, I haven't left them because I care about it and I want them to receive their sweet justice, even though they are not part of the lawsuit and they have been told over time and time again that they didn't have to apply or anything like that. They're still waiting. So we have been organizing during this entire process. I made a friend. She too is a redhead, and we instantly bonded over probably one of our first calls with suite plaintiffs when we were starting to get into the first role of negotiations and our settlement before we caught DeVos doing bad things. But I remember the comment specifically talking to Teresa. We were talking about like, will we be interested in attending the court hearing in person, and it would be in California, and like how it would all play out. And I made some silly crack about being a redhead ginger and my spicy attitude. And I learned that Teresa also was a redhead ginger with spicy attitude. And it's like an instant bond. And we have been, taking down the industry one little Facebook group at a time, but really, really indulging ourselves because we do care about this cause and we care about the outcome and we care about people, and we have actually seen the impact that it has on people's lives. It's not just something that you read about in a Times article or, and one of those articles talking about student loan forgiveness. Don't even get me started on that word. But, we actually hear people and the outcomes that come, from being discharged from fraudulent student debt from scammy schools. And here's the thing, it's not even scammy schools. I've worked with and I've talked with a lot of people that have gone to colleges that are people see as being legit, right? And they too have said and done things that are fraudulent in nature, making promises and advertising promises and, omitting certain things and falsifying documents. It's not just for-profit colleges. However, for-profit colleges are just more open about ripping you off because they don't get penalized for it. But I've worked with people who've gone to religious institutions. I've worked with people that have gone to, top tier colleges. I've got, certification programs. I've talked to people that attended a real college, but it was an online program that was, being implemented and instructed by a for-profit entity on, through the online college. And that wasn't even talked about correctly. So there's a lot of elements within the higher education sector that has a lot of, it's an easy way to make fraudulent money for corporations, basically. And it's just like I said, the for-profit college sector is just more open about ripping people off, and they have done it. And so the Sweet lawsuit, and I'm sure you've heard Teresa talk about, it is, I think, want to say the 6th largest civil lawsuit in the United States history. So it is not something that just happened and you do a wayside. I mean, it has affected our class and our post class, but let me just make it clear, everybody under the settlement, both class and post class, are still considered members of the Sweet case. So post class, you are class members. You still have the word class, right? So don't let the department sit there and try to gaslight us. You two are included. And they even said it on their website. But we had over 550,000 members, right? Like, that's a lot. That's a lot of members for people. And it's been a ridiculous, ridiculous adventure. But in the meantime, as you know, we have been organizing and we have been collectively creating our communities, and you all are part of it right here on our newest community for the Discord, run by Frank and team, Steph and Michelle. So you can see that we're starting to grow into areas that, we haven't been, our present hasn't been, because one thing that I do know is that misinformation runs rampant. And during my time of growing the Facebook groups and communicating and advertising and reaching out to people one by one, we don't advertise. We haven't ever had any funds, really to do anything. This has all been volunteer work from Teresa, myself, and other people that have stepped up. And we started creating relationships with other members who wanted to start their own groups for their Facebooks, for their schools, right? Facebook groups. And we kind of created these mini fusion centers, as I call them in the Intel world. And basically it's you all have your own Facebook group. You have your own admin. It's a safe space for you all to talk about your school specifically, without confusing people or over daunting people with information or not ridiculous, but redundant posts over and over again. So there are a bunch of small little Facebook groups, we chit chat with the admins for those groups to pump out information, whether that's announcements or court dates or updates or anything like that. And then during that process, I stumbled onto Reddit. I haven't been on Reddit for very long. It was a little bit out of my element, and a little bit complicated for me. The program itself, the website itself, has become a little easier over time. But I noticed that playing in Reddit, there are specific subs that, cater to generalization of we'll just say student loans, right? And I noticed that when talking about student loans, those subs are pretty freaking hostile. And I get mods and admins have to be a little more aggressive on the side of postings, because redundant posting can be too much. However, I don't like to really give people a hard time about, if you say DOE is the Department of Education, I'm not going to tell you, oh no, that means the Department of Energy. You got to spell it DOFED or something like that. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But my experience in that was not pleasant. And I was actually bullied and harassed a lot on that specific sub. So I'm trying to advertise for hey, we have a court case for BDTR Suite. Hey, look at this. Hey, this was just filed. It was always removed and it was always taken down, or my comments were always deleted. So I just realized during the process that there wasn't a borrowed offense to repayment sub. And I saw this as as we call it, an intel gap, right? You don't know what you don't know, but there wasn't a space for people to talk about borrowed offense on Reddit. And what I uncovered in starting the borrowed offense Reddit and creating it from scratch was that, there's a whole untapped element for borrowed offense for people seeking information about it. I've learned that a lot of people on Reddit, they don't like Facebook. They don't dabble in Facebook. If they do, it's not as much as Reddit. Reddit itself was its whole entire community full of people that had no idea about bar defense, or had filed and had no idea about the sweet case, and had filed and was still waiting 10 years later. So, in building the community, it started from just me. It was zero. And, I spoke with Teresa about it, and I recruited some different admins. And I have an admin that I've been working with for years who assists me in, keeping the conversations going. And then eventually Miss Sweet, she also tends to come in and talk about the sweet case. And for a while I was bullied and harassed, and naturally my comments were deleted, or anytime I advertised the sub, I was deleted, I was blocked, I was banned. But over the last 4 years, we've really made a dent in the community as well, and growing it from nothing and posting our updates and allowing people to have a safe space. And granted, everybody's not going to be happy in any social media world. And I found, reading is fundamental when it comes to learning about bar defense or needing updates. But we live in a very spoon-fed culture. Like, if you need something from Amazon, you can get it in 2 days. Or if you need something, want to go out and buy something, it's right there for you. You don't really have to do any legwork. And unfortunately, that also runs true in our element, where we had to kind of lock down posts, especially redundant posts, or posts like, hey, I just filed, what's next type of questions, because we found that the community, it really deterred people and turned them away. And we don't want that, right? So we have stricter elements in our social media communities because we don't want redundant information. And we firmly believe that knowledge is power. And the more that you know about what is going on, the process, what kind of loans you have, who your servicer is, if you have commercial held loans, if you have true private loans, what are the updates on this, and what schools fall on what? We want you to have that knowledge and that power, because when it comes down to it, it helps you advocate for yourself. Additionally, it helps you advocate for others who may not know, and lead them to be like, hey, I learned this and I want you to learn this. And then, they know, and they're able to go ahead and spread the word. And basically, all of our bar defense communities have grown by word of mouth, and a lot of volunteer work of hey, I know of this community. Hey, I know this, I know the lead plaintiffs. And really just growing a space that is trusted. Currently, I want to say we're probably close to 80,000 people. And I know there's going to be some overlap between folks that use a variety of different platforms for social media. And then naturally, Frank was like, hey, girl. And I was like, hey. And he was like, I want to start this. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. So Discord is really his baby. And he has brought us up to a whole nother level, because Discord is way above my pay grade. But what I've been learning, it's been pretty fascinating. And I've seen what he's been building here, and I'm excited for the next step. Overall, it's definitely where we need to be going. We've tried to dabble in TikTok. So if any of them content creators that are listening right now want to help us organize and, establish TikTok content, we're totally open for that. But we've basically have created a community where it's safe. And this was really adamant for the sweet case, because I don't know if you all know, in December, we had pretty much one of our final hearings. And we have been fighting the sweet case for 7 years. It's 7 years in June. I can't believe it's been that long. But, the Department of Education under the current Trump administration, number 2, actually have been trying to derail everything and throwing a temper tantrum. And the redheaded lawyer guy, who I do not claim as part of the redhead clan, he really wanted to derail it and try and get post-class individuals, an extension, so that they can continue to deny us and delay us and ruin our lives. And I guess 7 years isn't enough, so let's make it 10. And so we put out a call to our communities, and we were like, I basically was like, hey, I want to send a whole bunch of people for post-class to court in person, and we have to raise funds to do that. And we have to, we want to send people who would never have this experience. We want PPSL to, see the people, the lives that they've changed. And we want to, we want them to meet the lives that they've changed, because this has all been online. People haven't been able to really go and be supportive of PPSL or attend stuff in person. So it's been really hard, and that's why I think our communities are so strong online, is because like it's the place where we can vent and talk and push out correct information and deregulate the misinformation. But this past December, really, like, I cried a lot. It was very monumental. It was beautiful. And it really had, like, it showed me and Teresa, and it showed PPSL, like, what community we have built together. And you all showed up. Like, I was just like, okay, I was just thinking maybe, couple $1,000 and we can send maybe 10 people and really like put it together and show up for the posties or whatever. And, yeah, no, we raised we raised, like, enough money and then some to, and I still have some, and I'm, just so you know, I'm starting to plan for next month. I haven't pushed it out yet, side note, because I really cannot confirm, like, if this hearing is gonna be going on in April next month, but I'll go back to that. But in December, we raised enough money to send over 25 people that I have never really met in person. Actually, no, I don't think I've met anyone but Teresa in person, to show up and pack that courtroom. And, when I sat with Teresa at the plaintiff's table that day, next to PPSL, watched, Queen Becca slay it up and the little redheaded leprechaun guy, like, have a meltdown and a temper tantrum. And it was just, I look back and I just our whole courtroom was full of red shirts. And we had shirts and we had banners, and we really had a community there. We all went to lunch afterwards and like got to know all of these strangers who have bonded over this trauma, right? Because that's where we're at. We're in trauma. And we've bonded over this trauma and this experience, and really have learned that we can do this together. And so, all of those people, like, it was so awesome to finally meet them. And, many of these people haven't had their discharges yet. These are people that are posties who were on the Exhibit C and people who were not on the Exhibit C. And granted, we didn't get the whole, like, it had to be all or nothing in January. Judge Alsop decided to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. And naturally, they missed the deadline that the department has always missed the deadline the entire process, right? We are approaching the April deadline for the non-Exhibit C folks, but the Exhibit C folks who did not get a letter are entitled to full settlement relief per our settlement. And I know people are like freaking out about this because of the appeals that they're filing and all this ridiculous content of them regurgitating the same comments and, you know, rhetoric that they're just like, we're not real post class people and just all this bullshit, right? Like, we all know they're just grabbing for it, and they're just wasting our taxpayer money. But I don't think we have anything to worry about, because the law has always been on our side. It has been since day one, since the 7 years that Alsop became the judge on our case in 2019. He was assigned all the way to the moment that he retired in the end of December of last year. And he literally said, like, you all have taught me and exposed this entire system and basically how insanely not corrupt, but mismanaged it is. But, the law has always been on our side. We've had 2 Supreme Court appeals with their names on the docket, and it was really wild to see my name and Teresa's name on a docket in the Supreme Court's, docket list to hear. Like, I never thought of that day of my name being there. I don't know if I like that or not. Thankfully, I have a pretty common name, but, it's just been a wild ride. And so here we are. We're almost there. And I get a lot of emails from people saying, I'm still waiting. I haven't had any, nobody's calling me, nobody's writing me back, nobody's doing this, nobody's doing that. And I get it. This whole thing has been a hot mess. It's been a giant disaster. And I feel for you, as somebody who's gotten their discharge and had to do a lot of my own legwork. I know it's frustrating because I don't think when we filed the lawsuit that we really knew how broken the system is on the back end when it comes to student loans. And it just reiterates that student loans are just corrupt, and they're predatory and they're disgusting and they just need to discharge it all. It's just made up debt anyway. There's like literally, it's not even real money, right? It's interest on top of interest on top of interest. And, a lot of the exposures of the commercial loan program, the FFEL loan program, and the direct loan program, and the borrower defense to repayment program. And, when COVID hit, all of that is like insane. And then when you think about like your loans don't count when you're put in automatic forbearance because you are in forbearance when you're in borrower defense, like they don't count for PSLF or anything else like that. Like you're penalized. No fault of your own, you're penalized. And it just really exposes the laws and regulations that we definitely need to work on. Like if we can't eliminate all student loan debt, then incrementalism is a good thing that we could fight for and really start, harboring and saying, this is corrupt, this is stupid, why are we doing this? But that takes time. So we got to focus on finishing sweet, right? So we're almost there. And I hope that we can see people in April. We're almost there. And that was a really long story. I'm so sorry.
So, like, if anyone ever wonders about the level of passion that Alicia has, if you don't get it with how dedicated she is to the different communities she's involved with and that she runs, she just spoke for 46 minutes
Jesus
about
Christ.
borrower defense. That is passion. And it's her passion and Teresa's passion that led to my own passion in this because, they just got me so pumped about it and really making sure those who have been defrauded or felt slighted or any of that are getting the justice they deserve. And, we took it and ran with it. That's why the podcast was developed. That's why the website was developed. And if you don't know, if you aren't aware of this, she also developed the Borrower Defense Evidence Vault, where people who are just starting out on the borrower defense journey or are submitting a resubmission, they can go there and find evidence on various schools. It's a great website, easy to find information using the search. So her and Teresa have passion out the wazoo when it comes to borrower defense and things that schools have done to defraud the students. But one thing I don't know if the wider audience knows is how involved you were with the tech class. Do you want to talk about tech class?
Oh yeah, girl, let's talk about it. Yeah, so we all know that like the department's website is, as we call it in Scotland, it's shite, right? Yeah, so I don't know if you all have tried to apply using the website, and if you have, it's crashed out, it's timed, it hasn't saved your answers, it told you never submitted even though you thought you submitted, and basically the website is just junk, right? And when I got my partial approval under DeVos, I went back in to file another application, right? So this was, I want to say 2019-ish, towards 2020, right before Trump was out of office. And so I went in to reapply and like give them a nasty, like, how dare you only give me partial? This is a full Corinthian college is scammy, blah, 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 blah. It kept crashing on me and wouldn't let me finish and wouldn't let me load. And so I remember sending an email to the lawyer for the Pratt v. Cardona case, or Pratt v. DeVos at the time. And I was like, this website is shite and it won't let me apply and all this stuff. And when Cardona came in for the sweet case and we became our settlement agreement in June, and after that, I started really like thinking, well, that freaking website, like, how many people have not been able to apply or are not going to be in the sweet class because of that stupid website, right? Like, and then I really started thinking about it, like, as we moved on from June of 2022 into our final approval in January of 2023, I started really, like, speaking up about it. I'm like, what are they doing about the website? why are people not like, do they know their website is broken and they're not fixing it? Like, people can't apply, it's timing out. People miss deadlines because of their website. And there have been times that I've received message or have read comments about, people that had tried to apply in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, and they couldn't, and they got so frustrated with the website, they just never applied again, and then they find out about Suite, after the fact, and they're not part of it because they couldn't get the application in. So I brought it up to PPSL, and I would not stop harping about it until something was done. And thankfully, it wasn't part of the settlement agreement, so it wasn't written in, but, PPSL brought my concern up to them and was like, "Hey, your website, you really hindered a lot of people from being able to apply as part of class. You really hindered people not being able to apply as post class, like they missed the lawsuit altogether. Like, your website's broken. What's up?" So, as you know, PPSL was engaging in conversation per the court, per the court's order, talking about, problems and issues. And that was one of them that came up. And the FSA ombudsman heard our concerns and, instructed PPSL to gather the information for the tech survey. And that, they would see what they could do. And basically what had happened was they started investigating individuals that had filled out the survey to begin with, saying, I tried to apply for borrower defense, before the June 22nd date for 2022 to be part of class, and I couldn't because I had technical issues or website issues. And, I applied the next day, or it took me 2 weeks to apply. And then that also rang true for post-class folks. And they started investigating this. Got to remember, this is when they had like an almost full staff, like a whole 55 people or something on staff for the ombudsman FSA suite. And they started investigating and they started sending out waivers. And so we call you all techies because it's fun. And we call you tech classes basically. And it was up to the total discretion of the ombudsman for the suite case to decide. And it wasn't something that was like they looked at your thing or whatever, you said, "Oh yeah, I applied," and they approve you. They actually had to investigate everything. They had some way to investigate your website activity to see what was going on. They've also reached out asking for people, "Hey, do you have any evidence or took any pictures or anything?" And if you do, it makes their job a lot easier. But if they do the recommendation, and then the recommendation works its way up to, I guess, the top dog of suite ombudsman who makes the decisions, and then, they waive people into class. I don't have numbers, Frank, of how many people we've waived in. However, I do know that it really has been instrumental in, making sure people get the right justice that they deserve because of no fault of their own. I personally believe that the Department of Education gives zero patooties about that kind of stuff, and that's why they haven't fixed it, because I might be a conspiracy theorist now, but I think it's just a way for them to like demotivate people from applying, right? Because it's so time consuming to apply and then it just doesn't save. Or it crashes out or blocks out or it deletes all your information, and then you just want to pull your hair up and you just want to cry and never do it again. And I think it's on purpose. But yes, like, I did not shut up. I was in PPSL ear about that tech stuff for months. I was like, "What are you going to do about this?" "Well, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to fix this?" "Well, that's not fair. They need to fix this." And like, my argument was, this happened to no fault of their own. Like, this isn't their fault. You all deterred people from applying, because you wouldn't fix your stupid website that's been a known issue for years, and I have proof. But here we are. And I'm happy to read. I guess they're still working through the tech waiver stuff. So, if you're listening and you're not familiar with the tech waiver, basically, if you tried to apply for the suite lawsuit, whether that was as class or after the lawsuit closed, and you were having huge issues with the website crashing, not saving, not submitting your application, just being a total patootie piece of crapo. If you go to PPSL's website under the FAQ, there's information on how you can send an email to the suite FSA ombudsman, as well as copying PPSL about it. There's no guarantee that they will get to you because, staff is gutted. And there's no guarantee that you will be waived in, whether class or post class, depending on your situation. But it doesn't hurt to send in that email, right? Because you just don't know. Like I said, I just read a post earlier this week about somebody doing that, and that they were still going through them. And you may get an email that's asking, like, hey, do you have any evidence? Did you take screenshots or anything? Like, do you have anything time stamping this website crashing? And if you have it, give it to them, because that'll help them, push for your decision and approving it, hopefully, instead of them having to do like the background IT investigation to see if your claims are correct. So yeah, that's how that turned out. And honestly, it was the right thing for them to do.
Real quick before we move forward, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
I'm all paranoid now. In case you haven't noticed, we have a special guest in the audience as well, Alicia.
Who is it?
But I think she wants to stay incognito, even though her name actually now outs her who she is. But she is in the audience listening. So I'm not gonna, if she wants to come speak, I'm sure she'll let us know. But she is out there listening, and I know Michelle has a couple questions for you.
Let's go, Michelle.
All right. So, Alicia, thank you once again for wow. This is your platform to tell your entire story, and boy, did you.
I'm
That
sorry.
was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did jot down some questions while you were talking. To go back to the schools with all the lawsuits and everything.
Yes.
The schools themselves, do they just walk away scot-free with the money, or is there any repercussions for them? Will they be held responsible for any of this? Like, what happens to the schools? I know that there are still some schools out there active. A lot of it have closed,
Yes.
but what happens to them? Do you know?
Honestly, as you know, there is no accountability. We have in this realm, we have found that the attorney generals are the ones, the state attorney generals are the ones that are able to do a lot more of enforcement and action against entities that do bad practices like these schools. Again, Kamala Harris was instrumental in bringing down Corinthian College, right? That really started this whole element, this whole trickle down effect, and really started paving the way of exposing the corruption. But technically, borrower defense to repayment, there is disclosures or clauses, from my understanding, that the Department of Education could seek recoupment from these schools. And they attempted to do it with DeVry, right? So far, I cannot remember of any schools really being reprimanded or held accountable at the federal level for borrower defense to repayment claims. Basically what we see is these schools, if they get busted, right? And the state attorney general is the one that knocks them down. They file bankruptcy and they jump ship. The CEOs jump ship and they recycle, rinse, repeat. They'll go buy up a smaller school, or jump onto like a private equity company, and then buy into another school and create the whole process again. The CEOs or anybody in the higher up is never held accountable for any of these actions. Basically, this is a well-oiled money laundering, money consumer, financial crimes, white collar crime, operation going on. They have tweaked it so well that they're able to, again, like I said, one school goes down, they rinse, repeat, and do it all over again. You might remember that the Department of Education under Cardona announced that they were going to seek money against DeVry for borrower defense to repayment, recoupment, and DeVry cried about it, right? And then as soon as Trump came in, what did they do? They dismissed the lawsuit against DeVry. You saw the same thing with what was that one school? Oh, Not Liberty. It's a religious school, but they were lots of borrower defense claims against the school. I don't remember the name of it. And then naturally, there was a lawsuit filed, like saying that they were going to come after them for recoupment for borrower defense fees and the money that they stole. And they claimed religious persecution on top of that by the Biden administration. And then as soon as Trump came in, they dismissed the lawsuit, and they're able to rinse, repeat, and collect financial aid, and steal money. So they don't get in trouble. They never really have. So this is why, people always ask Teresa and I, like, don't believe anything you really talk about when people are talking about all this other action and going to, like, I don't want to downgrade going and talking to senators or, federal rulemakers or help committees or regulations or anything like that. But like the people that can do school group discharges for borrower defense or under the borrower defense programs for like Art Institute or ITT, or, you want big school groups, is the state attorney general's office. File complaints with them. Pick a blue state, because blue states are a lot more understanding and they understand consumer protection stuff. Blue states, they're the ones, the state attorney general is the one that can investigate and enforce regulations, laws, fines, or anything, create settlement agreements where like these schools have to discharge debt with the borrower defense program with the Department of Education for certain state residents. They have to pay fines. They have to pay settlement fees. They have to pay, reimbursement money to individuals. Like, file those complaints with the state attorney general's offices. Spike their stats, right? They're going to notice, like, if there's a big influx of people filing about University of Phoenix for defrauding and scamming them, they're going to see an influx if there's thousands of people all of a sudden starting to file complaints. And these complaints are, they lied to me about recruitment, enrollment, accreditation, financial aid, classes, quality education, accreditation of transferring credits, like any of that, licensing isn't accepted in states. Like, they're going to notice that. That is where you need to file, because they can enforce. The enforcement part is the biggest point. And then, naturally your vote matters, right? Like, had we had a different turnout in the election, I don't think we'd be in this predicament right now with borrower defense. And so when it comes around to electing, someone, you have to look at student loans as one of the criterias if you're passionate about it, right? And the people that you put in office are the ones that are going, God, I hope like we have another election, but that's a whole different story. The people that, you put in power have to represent what you want. And borrower defense to repayment in these scammy schools, like, it's a wild west out there, and they have to be held accountable for their actions, and they're not. So, I don't know, Michelle, if you've been watching the University of Phoenix stuff like play out.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, how they're like trying to like pawn their school off. And a lot
Yeah.
of it, like, they've tried to sell it to two different entities, like two state colleges. And, at first they almost got away with it. And that fell through because of the for-profit college label, as they call it. And I'm like, no, it's because you're sketchy as hell and you've been caught doing sketchy things. But one of the things was like, if University of Phoenix sells to a state college, that state college then consumes or assumes, I think the word is assumes the debt that University of Phoenix has. So if there is enforcement for borrower defense, then that state college would be on the hook for the University of Phoenix stuff for borrower defense if they ever go after for recoupment. And so they haven't been able to find a buyer, right? Because University of Phoenix is a well-known bad acting school that has thousands of pages of documents of doing sketchy stuff and ripping people off. And they just, your bad acting label follows you. So now they're trying to do the whole non-for-profit label, right? Now we're getting into the element of like, oh, you're labeling us as a for-profit. Well, that's what you are. You're a for-profit college, but okay, go ahead. And then they're trying to get rid of that label because of the stamina that goes with it. And they're now going as nonprofits, right? To confuse you. But they still keep their bad names and stuff like that because they don't get in trouble. They just don't get in trouble. So, yeah, that's where we're at with that. We're basically nowhere.
It's all a part of the machine.
It
It's
is.
all
It
I have
literally
one more question, though.
got it, yeah.
So as the Sweet case wraps up, you have developed your Vault website.
Yes.
What when it's over, what happens to Alicia? Like, what will Alicia do after all of this is over? Do you have any
Oh,
plans?
oh, you know, it's been so long. It's been 20 years playing this realm and 10 years was Sweet, right? I haven't, I've thought about it. Teresa and I have thought about our next steps because we're both discharged and one Sweet's over. But I think we're ready to get on the field, right? We've been on the excuse me, we've been on the bench due to excuse me, our names being part of the lawsuit, right? And we have to be good. We can't engage a lot due to being class representatives of the lawsuit. We really haven't gone to DC to be more outspoken about it or do any legislation or anything like that. But um I do think that might be our next step is to be a little more involved in the regulation side or, not I know I said don't go and talk to your senators, but going talking to senators and being loud and obnoxious about it, but in a politeful way. Additionally, word of mouth. We've talked about possibly starting a nonprofit together to really work on borrower defense stuff, and these are just dreams, right? We just haven't gotten there yet. And the website I feel has always been my long-term goal. I wanted a way to be able to share this evidence that I've collected over the years from groups and people and emails and stuff I find just researching and consumer fraud and all that. And this was the next step, and I was able to make it happen. It's taken a while, but our community again has donated their resources to make this happen and built this for me and like listened to me, and we created something. And I always quote Rogue One because it's the movie that really inspires me. It's like rebellions are built on hope, and I live by that because it's true. It's just the hope that we have one another and our community and our space. And so I'm curious, what do you all want to see what happens? Like, I'm curious to know, like, where do you see borrower defense after your stuff is gone? Are you like, do you still want to dabble in the world? Do you want to in this world? Do you want to organize with us? Do you want to speak up? Do you want to go to meetings? The possibilities are endless, and we have the support from PPSL, and we can definitely make the connections and grow as a community. We already have shown that we can do it in social media. So, you know, I I just so much, right? There's so much to do.
Well, I will say that, you mentioned earlier that you had, what, 80,000 across all social platforms?
Yeah, I think we're
Um,
close to
we haven't even really dipped our toes into TikTok, and I got you there fully. I totally am on board with TikTok. Um,
and
wow.
Instagram. That's another one, girl. Yeah. I think
Wow.
I think we can do it. We can
Mhm.
definitely pull it off. And
I have to admit, I struggle with the Instagram thing. I'm trying to get our brand out there, but I do struggle with Instagram.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Now I know why they're social media managers, right? But I don't know, like if somebody wants to help us start bankrolling, not any student loan debt organizations or anything, but we're a donation community and we can do so much. I think after we get through Sweet, the next hearing, we could maybe explore or talk like in person and see what the community thinks like during another live about ideas for the next step. I know that do you have a website, Frank, for the enrollment trap? I think you do, right?
Yeah, it's enrollmenttrap.net.
Yeah. because I remember reading it. And then working on your bot, because you got to remember, the easier we make it for people to apply, the better, right? Because a lot of people are overwhelmed with legal stuff and borrower defense to repayment. It's repetitive. The application is repetitive. It's confusing to people, especially if they don't understand like the legal element or exactly what the department is looking for. So like making it easier for them is to apply or get the answers featuring like i.e. your bot, Frank, and creating that way to find the evidence, like you can use this, because in my website I'm putting tags and hashtags and like this is an enrollment, this is a recruiting doc, this is a lawsuit, like this is a specific school, I'm tagging, hashtagging stuff so that people can find it easily because I have to think simple for people, right? And then naturally just spreading the word. It's word of mouth. I mean, Teresa sends me stuff on Instagram all the time, and it's like people online who are like try to sell bar defense, like, hey, pay me $99 and my team will tell you whether you're for bar defense or not. Like we see that all the time. I'm like the
Yeah,
comments and stuff
I've
we
come
see.
across people that just run their business totally on
Yes.
scamming the people that have already been scammed, and
Yes.
we have to be smarter than that. Like, we have to advocate for ourselves and not pay anyone at all to
Yes.
do this for us.
And it's like the amount of misinformation, girl. Like, it's wild, and, like, people don't even know, like, that they're part of SWEET. You would think in a
Mm-hmm.
lawsuit, like, the Department of Education would at least do their due diligence and, like, email or mail people about being part of SWEET, and, like, there's still thousands of people who have no idea that they are even part of SWEET. They don't even know, like, the day that they applied, whether they're part of class or post class either, and that's a failment. That's a fail on the department, right? They should do the bare minimum. And I think maybe, like, next lawsuit, because I highly suspect that once Sweet's over, boo, like, we're gonna be right back to where we're at because look who's in power. Look who hates bar defense. Look how many pending applications have been filed after November 16th, 2022, right? Aren't we back to like 250,000 people again that have filed after Sweet? There's no way that this isn't gonna happen again. There's no way that, like, there's not gonna be some sort of legal action again.
And as
Because
long as there's for-profit schools out there, there's going to be borrower defense applicants in the future.
Oh,
And
yes.
I can't imagine how many people to this day do not know the history, are just unaware that they're being scammed.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's why we're doing this. We're doing the podcast and all the social media posts and the websites and the bots. And it's a grassroots effort from students for students.
Yep. Yes, it is, girl.
I mean, all this week, I have my blog posts that are going up on Facebook, and it's all tied to really the tactics that the schools use
Oh,
to
gosh.
get you to enroll, make you feel bad then when you realize you paid for an inferior product. So all the blogs this week are really tied to the whole idea of, you know, it's not your fault. They're trained to do this to you,
Yeah.
and if you take nothing else from this, we have given you all the tools you need to do your application yourself for free. Never, ever, ever pay anyone to do it for you. If anyone reaches out saying, hey, we can do your application and get you approved, they are lying to you. The only people who can approve your application is the Department of Education. Anyone else who says guaranteed approval is lying. Do not fall for it. Teresa says it all the time on the various social medias. Alicia says it all the time. Never pay anyone to do it or help you with it. You can do this on your own. Alicia has the repository. We have that bot out there that you can literally ask it anything about your borrower defense and it will guide you in the right direction.
Frank, if I just want to note that, like, if people come across being hassled to, those kind of advertisements to pay for an application, or we can guarantee, like, file a complaint with the FTC. Like, file a complaint against them. They should not be charging for anything borrower defense to repayment related at all. Not to apply, like you said, not to look at your application or anything like that.
They're
And
feeding on the desperation,
yes,
you
they are.
know, and they're just scamming you again.
Yes. And I know Teresa has mentioned she has met people that have paid for that. And they thought the people that paid thought their application was submitted, and it never was. They never submitted the application. They just took their money. And I do want
That
to
doesn't
note,
surprise me.
there's a lot of shame that goes along with our debt. And there's a lot of shame that goes along with going to a for-profit college. And it really does play with your mental health. And like, there's no outlet for people to talk about what's going on. But like you said, Frank, and you're very clear about it, what happened to you is nothing more than you being victimized by a college or an entity, not even a college, a private entity, a corporation using a well-oiled scheme to defraud. And I think when I radicalized a little bit was when I watched the documentary Fail State, right? That came out in 2017. Basically, it's a documentary that talks about like the very early stages of borrower defense, and it focuses on Corinthian College before before they went down. And I actually interviewed with the producer because he was working on a second one, and I was going to do, part of the second one, but that never materialized. But I watched that, and it made me angry. And it made me realize, like, what happened to me, I am a victim of predatory tactics, and it made me feel a lot better. And I was like, "Okay, I'm ready to take the industry down. I'm ready for it to burn," you know? I mean that as a joke. I'm not necessarily going to burn anything, just in case the FBI is listening. But, watch Fail State. Y You will know that our government sold us out the entire time, both sides of the aisle. And it's a really good documentary, and I do suggest that people should watch it.
And I do think that it's come down to we all have to do our part.
Mhm.
We're not angry enough and we're not upset enough. We can't rely on others to, like Alicia, yourself, and Teresa to kind of lead the pack, which has been absolutely terrific. We can't rely on you guys once this is over.
Right,
We have to do this ourselves. We
right.
have to get angry enough to want to fight for our rights. And there's nobody else that's gonna save us for that.
Oh,
Um,
I think we could look at, Michelle, what can we do that doesn't cost us gazillions of dollars? Yes, we can all travel and talk to people and, watch them look at our quote unquote white papers get thrown in the trash, and, all that time is wasted. Like, that's all bull. Like, none of that is changing the law. It's playing their game, right? And I think the one thing that we can collectively do in an internet world is file complaints with the attorney general's offices. Just file complaints. Just have people who've been defrauded start filing complaints in the masses and targeting or doing it collectively as an organized collective whole, looking at blue states. Maine, is it Maine? Massachusetts. I think Massachusetts is one. Maybe Michigan is another one. Definitely not Florida, but you can still file in Florida, but don't suspect until you get a favorable government that takes consumer protection legit. But like, yes, we all talk about wanting to change the laws and this and that, but this is 10 years going, and what has changed, right? Not much. A few schools have gone down. We've had some full school discharges where hundreds of thousands of people are still waiting in the wind. There's no communication about what's going on with that. You still have the sweet lawsuit. You still have 250,000 people waiting after the sweet lawsuit's done with. Like, what can we collectively do as a whole without spending a lot of money? And I think attorney generals is the answer at the moment. And Teresa and I have been screaming at out of the top of our lungs, and nobody listens to us on that. Like these student loan debt companies or organizations that say they help for borrower defense, and then they lead these people on a wild goose chase. Like, the answer is filing complaints. That's it. That's basically how it is. Filing complaints and making noise. I think that's like really the next step for this.
Well, that's the whole idea behind a grassroots movement, right? You start, where you can, and it grows. Um, low overhead,
Yeah.
and bigger results. Now, I have one last question, and we've
All
got
right.
we've really kind of gone way over our time, which is fine because I love hearing your story and your passion and what you're talking about. Back to the December 11th hearing. It was a great moment because people were there supporting. Because whenever I watch the hearings on Zoom, I always feel bad because Teresa is sitting there all alone.
Yeah.
And the December 11th hearing, she had her people with her, right, backing her, supporting her, and it was a great moment for the movement. However, as always in life, whenever there's greatness, evil tries to find its way in. And I was just curious if you wanted to share anything about what occurred after the hearing. I know you and I have talked about it, so I know you typically don't mind discussing it, but if you don't want to, that's fine too. But if you want to, say anything about that, you're more than welcome to.
Ooh, caught me off guard. Let me calculate what I'm gonna say without with being professional, right? I do want to note that what happened to Teresa and myself, as well as every single person that was there, and in reflection to every single person that donated for folks to go, should be angry and appalled about what had happened. We were aggressively harassed, assaulted, and just degraded by someone who acts in this realm, who is a paid actor, a paid employee of an organization. And I will not give them any more time than that, except for how they acted is inconsiderate and unprofessional. And it was disgusting. And it ruined the moment for every single person there. It ruined the moment for PPSL to meet the individuals of the lives that they were changing. And it really, really, really hurt Teresa and myself because of how it played out. It was unprofessional and disgusting. And for an organization that touts to be helping borrowers and wanting to work together and, wanting to change student loan debt, they did the complete opposite and aggressively targeted us on purpose. They've aggressively lied to people that were there about who they were, and they made a complete fool of their purpose. And we don't tolerate harassment or bullying from anyone. I don't care who who you represent. You do not harass or bully anybody. And I know that Teresa and I we're very hurt by the moment. We're still pretty hurt by the moment because it wasn't just something that was a tiff or a cat fight. It was verbal assaults, words coming out of this lady's mouth that were just gross. So we move on, we pick up collectively, we stand together. We discuss the traumatic incident. We've talked about the next steps, how it should be handled, how it is not being handled. But I do note next time if anything comes about, it won't be so pleasant. We are allowed to show up in court to represent the class as a whole, all 550,000 people, along with all of the people that are outside of the class and anyone that's in a group discharge. Like, we're there for everyone for borrower defense. And we are a grassroots organization. We fund ourselves. We believe in our safe spaces, and we will continue to do that no matter how bad people want to throw us off, derail us, or even if the Department of Education wants to take pictures of us on the sly and put our name on a billboard, calling us student loan agitators. It doesn't, we keep moving forward because our goal, right, is to get that sweet justice. And so, come April, I hope that we can continue to do that. And we're going to continue to organize. And I'm about to push out my survey to see what non-exhibit C folks want to go to California to show up in court next month. So be on the lookout for that. And I know that Frank will be pushing it out. Frank and Michelle will push it out for me here. So that's all I want to say about that.
And one other thing about the December 11th, people may not be aware, was it was also, I believe, Teresa's birthday,
Yes.
which
Yes.
made it extra hard on her, I'm sure.
Yes. So her birthday was around that time. Yes, I'm not going to give the date of when her birthday is, but yes. So it was actually very special for her. It was a big moment for her, and to be able to be surrounded by peeps who support and love and really embrace her as a person and everything that she has helped done, has helped done, and continues to do. So if you need a good paralegal, girls, she is your woman. If you need to hire a good paralegal, I'm just gonna go ahead and plug that in there. But we had a good time celebrating. She's been on this journey alone because we just don't have, like, it's like $2,000 for me to fly out to California, and hearings were what, every couple months, and then I need to like drive into California, and that was $100 there and $100. It's like, it's expensive for me to go, and there are no other plaintiffs that are engaged. So really, like, she was there in court by herself, and she would drive and go to court and have to board Mina. Poor Mina. And then she's there by herself. So like, this was really memorable for her to let her know that, like, we love you, girl, and I'm glad that we were able to like be there for her, and like be able to celebrate her birthday as well. Granted, what happened outside the courthouse really stole. Well, I'm gonna say it tried to steal that moment, and then we were just like, nah, we're gonna have a good time anyway. But yeah, so I don't want her to be alone in April either. So I'm hoping to get our non-exhibit folks there. So look out for my survey. Again, another plug.
So can you tell us, for those who might be listening not live and maybe listening to it later, can you give us like a quick summary of what is happening in April?
Absolutely. So our settlement was kind of altered per the judge to accommodate the Department of Education's temper tantrum. And he changed the dates for posties for post-class individuals for suite. So if you filed January 23rd, 2022 through November 16th, 2022, you're considered post-class. Post-class deadline had a 3-year deadline from the time the settlement was approved. So on January 28th of 2026 was the deadline for all post-class to have a decision by the department for their applications. However, the Department of Education put in their whining or whatever about it and wanted a hearing and filed a motion to, like, they needed more time. They wanted 18 more months on top of the 3 years they already had. So to accommodate their temper tantrum, Judge Alsup said, well, we already have the Exhibit C list, which was used for class. So post class was 209,000, or what was 260, and then they got through some of them. So I think maybe around 196, there was 196,000 people left, right? And so Judge Alsup said, okay, well, go ahead and process those who had an application for the Exhibit C list. Exhibit C list is a list of 151 schools that were decided upon and agreed upon that can be used to streamline the process for a borrower defense application under the settlement for class members for suite. So since there were so many people left for Exhibit C, so many people left for post-class, the judge said, use Exhibit C list for post-class individuals, and they must have a decision by the January 28th deadline, because the department already has information and details and documentations that these schools are a strong indica of bad acting, doing bad things or being shady, right? It's not an admission of guilt. Just so everybody knows, you can't use this on any new borrower defense claims, the Exhibit C list. So anyone that went to a school that was not on the Exhibit C list he went ahead and extended the deadline to April 15th, tax day, and said that the Department of Education must make a decision of these individuals' applications by April 15th for those not on the Exhibit C list. And if they don't, then those individuals they're going to have a meeting to see if the department was trying to work in good faith to process the outstanding applications. But as you know, we have all seen in the last couple months that the department really has not been acting in good faith to work through the pending application for Exhibit C and not Exhibit C folks, right? So my understanding when I spoke with PPSL, or their comment was that that was the deadline for non-Exhibit C folks, was that they must have a decision by that date of April 15th. And if there is no decision, then they too are entitled to full settlement relief per a settlement contract. So in order to accommodate or celebrate or really show up, I've been dabbling with sending people, like getting my stuff organized to raise funds to send people out for Exhibit C. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. Send people out for court for non-Exhibit C folks. So there's quite a few people that I've met through some of the smaller schools or schools that aren't on the list because they didn't have a lot of applications, but are still SWEET members. So I'm going to send out a survey, like I said. I'm hoping to show up in court because this will be the official court date, the very first court in-person hearing with the new judge. I think it's Judge Gillum Jr. is his last name. He's never met us before. So good impressions, right? We show up and wear red and everybody's like, oh, look at all the sweet folks. But it's going to be a lot smaller because there's not as many people in the non-Exhibit C area. And that is the goal. So I will be pumping out a survey. I really want to send just non-Exhibit C folks to show up, but we could also push people that are posties and then people that are class as well, because in general, we have the whole no sweet left behind. That's our motto, sweet justice.
And I think there was some discussion with some people at PPSL about having, if we all show up next time, to have some security to help us. So I
Yes.
will make sure personally that will happen.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the same agitator that carried out that behavior will be there, just like they have before, acting like a fool. And
Mhm.
since, quote unquote, that's their town, we're not welcome there, apparently. So I suspect that they too will be in attendance again to get content.
And we will
But
be better prepared.
yeah, I'm not dealing with that. Like, that is just, the whole situation is just disgusting. But yeah, we will be there together and in solidarity, in our red shirts. And well, we won't have the banner because I mailed the banner back to PPSL in
Well, I can
Massachusetts.
always get another one. That's not a problem.
Okay. I do have the little flag that you gave me, but yeah. Or maybe we just bring more flags because they're easier to transport.
We'll
But
work that out. Yeah.
so I think we're gonna go ahead and do another fundraiser as well. I'll start a new one up, and I still have funds from the last time. I haven't, that's our money for Sweet, right? People donated for that, so that's what we're gonna use it for. So hopefully plane flights aren't $1 million. We can at least hopefully send up to 10 people, but I think any more funds that we get, will help us fund more people to go. I know it's so last minute though. I feel so bad, but this is what I did last time, so I'm hoping that I'll just go with it. Just go with it,
Yeah. I
Alicia.
mean, it all works out in the end,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at how many people showed up.
Oh my
We can
God.
do
Yeah.
it. We can do it again. Yes.
Like, I was so blown away about how many people. I was like, "Oh, it's only gonna be a few $1,000s." No, we raised like $20,000. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that much money in my life. I've been such a poor student loan holder.
It's so
But yeah,
amazing.
it was so beautiful. I cried a lot.
Mm.
But yeah, let's do it again. I think we can.
Well, I know you work early and it's getting late, so I do want to thank you, Alicia, for filling in last minute to give us a guest slot. I think it was definitely worth it. we can do our topic next week, or who knows, maybe we'll have another special guest. Wink, wink, to the person silently sitting in the audience.
No
Normally
pressure, though.
no pressure at all. Normally we would take questions at this point. We'd end up the podcast and take questions, but I'm sure Alicia is tired and wants to get to bed, so I do apologize for that. Maybe in a future podcast we can get her back to take a few questions at some point. But
Yeah.
thank you so much.
No, thank you. I'm sorry I talked a lot, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad it was. I think we cleared up a lot.
I would never attempt to not let you talk and speak your truth.
I will
Yes,
talk your
no
ear off.
apology needed at all. We
Aw,
welcome
you're
it.
so sweet. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope you learned a little bit about my journey, where I've been and where I'm going. And, we have good things in store and we're growing. If you want to be part of our team or feel like, being we have friends everywhere. If you want to be part of the rebellion, just let us know. We'll figure it out. There's no rules, right? We just go with it. So
We're
thank you,
pioneers.
Michelle.
Yes.
Thank you, Frank, for
Thank you.
the voice.
Thank you, Alicia.
Talk soon.
So this was a
Thank
much
you.
longer podcast than usual, and it was definitely worth it. But tune in next week, and we'll either have our topic or we might have something else. Who knows? You never know what you're going to get with the podcast. So thank you, everybody. Michelle, thank you. Alicia, thank you. And the audience member who is here, thank you as well. Michelle, any closing words?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you again, Alicia. Thank you, Frank, for just having this platform and this space. I mean, look at
Right?
what we're doing here. It's amazing. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And just remember, we are not alone. You are not alone. And your story matters. So we are here for you. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up. See you guys next week.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back.
The enrollment trap.